Good afternoon. The Committee on Conservation and Natural Resources will come to order. Mr. Clerk, could you open the roll? Is Travis? I saw him here. Is he?
He'll be here in a moment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum?
Thank you so much. All right. First thing we have to deal with is we have a bill that has been requested to be re-referred. That's House Bill 122 from Delegate Sullivan, and it's to be re-referred to Courts of Justice. Could I have a motion to re-refer to Courts of Justice? We have a motion and a second to re-refer House Bill 122, Delegate Sullivan, to Courts of Justice. Could you open the roll, please? Vote aye if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 13, no zero.
That bill is re-referred, and I believe next on our calendar we have a subcommittee report from our friends at the Companion Animals Subcommittee. We have two bills, HB 223 from Delegate Orrock and House Bill 1354 from Delegate Martinez. And I will turn the mic over to Senator Favola, Chairman of the Companion Animal Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Companion Animals met, and we would like to report out HB 223, which has to do with cruelty to companion animals and equines. The bill is very similar to mine, very similar, and I think it is the wish of both patrons that we conform HB 223 to the Senate version, and then perhaps the House Ag will just report my bill out, and we can avoid conference. That's our plan. So the subcommittee recommended reporting HB 223 with a substitute to conform it to Senate Bill 11, and that was a vote of 3-0.
All right. Thank you, Senator Favola. Do we have any questions from the committee? All right. Can I have a motion to conform the bill to Senator Favola's?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to conform to Senator Favola's similar bill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that bill is conformed. Do I have a motion on that bill?
Move to report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report HB 223. Delegate Orrock, would you open the roll, please? Vote aye if you're in favor, yea if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. That bill reports. Senator Favola, your second bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second bill was House Bill 1354. The patron was Delegate Martinez. This had to do with creating a prohibition on declawing cats. In the subcommittee, we adopted an amendment to House Bill 1354. So I so move that the subcommittee amendment be adopted.
Okay. So we have a substitute then before us. Could we have a motion on the substitute? Second. Motion and a second to report the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The bill as substituted is before us.
One opposed to the substitute.
One opposed?
To that amendment. Yes.
Okay. Who is that?
Me.
Okay. Record Senator Hausman. All right. And
Mr. Chairman, with that amendment, and I can understand somebody being opposed to it, we had a lively conversation, but that amendment does allow for a provision to declaw a cat if the life or health of the owner was at risk, because sometimes there are certain diseases or disorders, if you will, that like a hemophiliac that would suggest and necessitate not having any scratches. So that was the substitute that you just adopted. Having adopted that, it is the recommendation of the subcommittee that we report HB 1354 as amended.
we have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to report House Bill 1354 from Delegate Martinez. Clerk will open the rolls. Vote yea if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Ayes 13, noes 1. The bill reports, and I'd like to thank the Companion Animal Subcommittee, Chairman Favola, and Senators Pekarsky and Stanley for their work, and I appreciate it very much, and so does the committee.
3 Democrats.
There we go.
Our work is completed.
All right, here we go. We have, now we're ready to get into our sign-up list, and I think we start out with Delegate Tran. Are you here? Yes, you are. Delegate Tran, tell us all about House Bill 985.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, could we start with House Bill 1186, which might go a little bit faster? Would that be okay? House Bill 1186 is before you, and I appreciate this opportunity. I do have a substitute, and I'd like to explain the difference between the substitute and the version that we sent over from the House.
Oh, okay, why don't you explain that, and then we'll
Great.
have a motion to adopt the substitute.
It is a simple change. As we all know, there are lots of different directions that a report to the General Assembly can go. So the substitute just makes it so that the department posts a report on their website about the pilot program to make it publicly available in terms of the outcomes of the pilot.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion on the substitute?
I move that we adopt the substitute.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the bill as substituted is before us. Please tell us about the bill.
Sure. The underlying bill creates a pilot program to be managed by the Department of Conservation and Recreation to provide all-terrain wheelchairs for use at state parks and to let the public know how the outcomes of the pilot, what the outcomes of the pilot are. All-terrain wheelchairs are built to withstand rough terrain, more so than conventional wheelchairs, and they often have continuous tracks like a bulldozer or a tank rather than conventional wheels. Right now, 16 of Virginia's 41 state parks have accessible trails, but that means that some of these trails are able to be used by regular wheelchairs, and even at that point, it's still very difficult for some of our constituents to use them. And so this pilot would help make Virginia more accessible, make our state parks more accessible so that more people may enjoy their beauty. Last year, I carried a version of this bill that didn't make it out of the House. We weren't able to figure out a way to fund this pilot, but I really appreciate Director Wells and the team at the department for identifying a non-general fund option is using the fees from our specialized state park license plates to help provide and purchase these wheelchairs. Right now in our state parks, we also provide rentals of kayaks and other types of equipment. So kind of that helps to cover all the liability issues that would arise from this pilot. And we also last year sought confirmation from the Attorney General's office that that would be the case. So this would not be any different than the types of equipment rental that we provide right now. So we're really excited about this opportunity to provide increased accessibility to our state parks to Virginians, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Senator Williams-Graves.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Mr. Chair, the question that I have does regard liability. You said that the Attorney General cleared the liabilities simply mirroring it to that of a kayak or something or another like that. How does that work if a person who is not able to freely move were in one of the ATV wheelchairs and maybe hit a rock, hit a bump, hit, uneven, unstable, whatever? How does that work with regard to the Commonwealth and its liability? Who's responsible there?
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, I would probably ask Director Wells to speak specifically about the way that it works now. But to clarify, it would be under the same policy we have as a state, which my understanding is that we are not entirely liable. But I look to my friend, Director Wells.
DCR Director Wells, welcome.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Wells, and the Director of the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Non-attorney spokesperson, but Mr. Chairman, Senator Graves, as the delegate stated, we do currently have release agreements that you sign when you rent a kayak, so it would be no different if you rented a kayak on your own and you ran into trouble. I think from a functional standpoint, it's likely as we develop the guidance around this program that we would probably require you to go out with someone if there were issues like that.
Okay. Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speak to the bill. I think this is a really neat concept. I had never really seen this. I'm going online looking at it. But did I understand that, Mr. Chair, that the parks would actually have these to rent to, I guess, visitors? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the delegate by saying that the department would develop the pilot so they could for either rent at a small cost or at no cost, depending on how they develop those regulations. This type of wheelchair pilot is available in other state parks and federal parks across the country. So you have them in Georgia, Minnesota, for example, and other states. And so they do it differently state by state, and that would leave it to the department to develop that program.
Thank you. Is that
Yes, thank you.
Senator Mulcahy?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Please, go ahead.
Will this have to be referred to finance?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I have a motion when it's time.
All right, let's find out first. Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the bill?
If there's anyone online that would like to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Any opposition? Is there? Oh, please, go ahead, Matthew.
Matthew Shapiro, wheelchair user, strongly in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Matthew. It's good to see you. And Director Wells?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Wells, DCR Director, we do support the bill. Appreciate the patron bringing this idea forward.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, we have two people online that would like to speak.
Please go ahead.
Chris Golden, you may unmute and please make sure your camera's on.
Hi, can you see me?
Please go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Chris Golden. I'm a resident of Fairfax County, and I am the accessibility advisor for the Friends of Mason Neck State Park. I have a spinal cord injury and use a manual wheelchair. I have found the accessible trails at Mason Neck State Park have deteriorated, and they are very difficult for me to use. And we believe that this bill is the best way to make the parks accessible to me and others like me, and we would ask you to support it. Thank you.
Tom Blackburn, you may unmute and please make sure your camera's on.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I'm Tom Blackburn, and I'm on the board of the Friends of Mason Neck State Park. I would only want to add to what Ms. Golden has stated, that throughout our state parks, the trails follow the natural contours of the land, which is, of course, appropriate. That means that in many cases, the slopes are too great for wheelchair users to use them safely. And this will allow our mobility impaired people to make much better use of our beautiful state parks and open them up to greater people. So I really urge that we support the bill.
Thank you so much. Anyone here to speak in opposition?
If there's anyone online
we
to speak
have
in
a
opposition,
motion.
raise your hand.
Okay. I believe Senator Mulcahy had a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to report and refer to finance.
We have a motion to report to refer to finance and a second. Would you open the roll, please? Vote yea if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Congratulations, Delegate Tran. And if I could, after you finish your next bill, Delegate Sullivan, I believe you're trying to chair a committee somewhere? With that? Okay. And so we'll deal with this bill and then get to you, Delegate Sullivan, out of turn here. He's the chairman. Oh, he's not? Oh, okay.
And we respected you, Rip.
You know, when these Arlington people turn on each other, not anymore. It used to be. All right. Anyway, Delegate Tran, tell us about House Bill 985.
I'm not on that committee, but House Bill 985 is in front of you now. Thank you so much. This bill bans the use of driveway sealants that contain levels of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in excess of 1% by weight. Study after study from the federal government to research published in scientific peer journal reviews show that PAHs are toxic and sealants with high PAH impact our public health and wildlife. Right now, VDOT does not use these sealants with this level of PAH, and big box stores do not sell driveway sealants that have this level of PAH either. And I went back and did some research, and the earliest article I could find about that was in 2012, but it may have preceded that article. So at least for the last 12 years, big box stores have not sold these types of sealants. Driveway sealants extend the life of asphalt driveways in homes and neighborhoods. However, particles containing high pH levels can become airborne and inhaled, can enter the body through house dust, or washed into storm water. Young children up to 6 years old are particularly vulnerable as they ingest high levels of house dust. And studies have also shown that residences that are next to parking lots with high PAH seal coats have a 25 times higher toxin load than those residents that are not adjacent to those parking lots. And according to the U.S. Geological Survey, people living nearby parking lots where these sealants have been shown to have a 38 times greater likelihood of developing cancer sometime in their lives, with childhood exposure being the most critical time of exposure. And I got into this issue because, as you all know, I have lots of kids, lots of them that are little, playing around on the driveway, as they should be, right? But playing ball, hanging out, rolling around on the ground, and they're breathing in these particles. They're also not always washing their hands, as kids are apt to do, and then getting them and ingesting them. These products are also really bad for our waterways. PAH has been detected in Virginia waterways and in several fish populations. There's evidence tying PAH to freshwater mussel decline in the Clinch River and showing that PAH is a driver of fish cancer in the Elizabeth River. There are also experiments that demonstrate negative impacts of PAH on early life stages of the Chesapeake Bay's native oysters, threatening a vital part of our bay. In response to these toxins, fish develop cancer, tumors, and lesions. Oysters have reduced spat set and fertilization, and mussels have reduced survivorship. These are some of the reasons why VDOT and Home Depot and Lowe's, that they've stopped selling PAH and VDOT have stopped using them, because they're really concerned about that liability. And this is also why other states in the Chesapeake Bay watershed have banned sealants with high levels of PAH. So we're talking about Maryland, DC, New York, all have statewide bans, in addition to 9 localities in Pennsylvania. We've taken many, many, many steps to nurture the Chesapeake Bay and get it back to a healthy, thriving ecosystem. And I hope that we'll pass this bill today to continue doing our part to protect our children's health, our waterway, our wildlife, and our marine resources in the Bay. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your questions.
Thank you, Delegate Tran. Are there questions from members of the committee on this bill? All right. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in support of this bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joe Wood, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. This is an issue that has been really researched very well. There are literally dozens of studies related to this specific issue, highlighting impacts related to these products. And I want to today break down really 4 questions that the peer-reviewed scientific literature has researched and answered. And many of these come in the highest tier journals that exist. Environmental Science and Technology, arguably the top journal of peer-reviewed publications for environmental science, has published over 5 articles on this in the last 10 years. So the first question at hand, are PAHs toxic? The science is very clear on this. Yes, we see it in fish in the Elizabeth River. They develop cancer in response to these things. Mussels, oysters, both have significant effects related to PAHs. In the Chesapeake Bay, this is issued as one of the top tier problems associated with toxics in the Chesapeake Bay watershed that we're wrestling with. And it's a major issue. PAHs are definitely toxic. There's really not a question about that. The second question is, do these products that we're talking about, do they actually contain PAHs? And again, the answer is absolutely yes. These products typically contain coal tar, which is 50% by weight PAHs. The end product itself has about 10 to 15% of the product itself is these toxic materials. So absolutely, there's no question that these products contain PAHs. And furthermore, the legislation itself specifically calls out products with a high level of PAHs that it's applicable to. So absolutely they do. The third question is, do these products result in a loss of PAH to our environment? And again, study after study finds that these PAHs leak out into our environments. 500 times road dust that comes from these areas have 500 times the level of toxic, leading to 25 times the level of house dust toxics that people are exposed to. Watershed study after watershed study, about 5 of them have documented that 70 to 80% of PAHs in waterways at times come from just this source alone, 50 times higher than alternates from this product, PAHs. They also expose the workers that apply these. The air that the people that apply these products breathe, the moisture on their skin, and the urine that comes out of their bodies has higher levels of PAHs. So absolutely, PAHs are exposing our environment from these products. And then finally, if that's not enough, there are several studies that have documented the runoff associated with coal tar sealants leads to problems in organisms. In a study on mice, runoff associated with coal tar sealants led to mutations in the stomach, the lungs, the liver of these organisms at high rates. Documented evidence of coal tar sealants driving cancer in these organisms. Aquatic insect populations decline vastly in response to exposure to these organisms. And finally, oysters, again. If you expose oysters to these things, they do not survive, they don't do well, they have abnormalities. Okay. So around the country, people have recognized that this is a big problem. States have banned it, localities have banned it. Big box stores recognize this is a liability and don't see a reason to contain these objects. So for those reasons, I'd ask for your support for this bill and appreciate
Just a
your
quick question for you. That there are, my understanding is there are a number of other products that produce these PAHs. Is that correct?
Other alternates, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
A number of other sources, I should say, are the cause of PAH in the environment. Is that correct?
Certainly. PAHs come from a variety of different things, but the concentration of PAHs in these products in particular is so high that it generates a much larger risk than many of the other types of exposure.
Thank you very much. All right. Next up, please, if you could introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm Michael Jones and members of the committee. I'm Michael Jones. I'm a business owner here in Virginia from Petersburg, and we're actually a paving company and we do seal coating work. The coal tar sealer, we actually used to use the coal tar sealer, and there's actually an alternative base out there for that now that we started using back in 2015. So I am in support of the HB 985 because there is another alternative that we can use other than the coal tar base sealer. And price-wise, it's about maybe 5 to 10% difference in the price. And we switched to the alternative product because we did learn that the coal tar base sealer was a carcinogen. We learned, of course, firsthand that it's toxic and it does burn the skin also. And we did this because of the health of our clients, employees, and of course, because of the environment. And we have been successfully bidding on jobs, private and government jobs, that still keeps us competitive, even with people using the coal tar base.
Okay.
All right. And I also feel that there's been less turnover also for us switching over to the alternative base because it doesn't harm the skin also.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We have the rest of the folks testifying. If you're not doing scientific testimony, if you could just let us know who you're with and whether you support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nathan Thompson, James River Association. Given the elevated levels of pH that we see in our major tributaries, the Maury, the cow pasture, we support the bill.
Thank you.
Chris Lamb, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. We support the bill.
Thank you.
Zach Scott with the Potomac Conservancy. We support this bill and want to thank the delegate for bringing it forward.
Mr. Chair, Pat Calvert on behalf of Virginia Conservation Network. We also support this bill.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there those here in opposition to the bill?
If there's anyone online that would like to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Alex Thorpe with Commonwealth Strategy Group on behalf of the Pavement Coatings Technology Council. Before I begin my remarks, I do want to clear up a couple of comments that were made. With regard to VDOT not using this product, VDOT does not seal driveways. So I'm not familiar with their use of this product, but it doesn't seem relevant to me.
Thank you for that clarification.
PAH is in everything. So, of course, we're going to find it in our waterways. Senator Stewart, when you do an oyster roast and you burn charcoal or wood, you're releasing more PAH into the environment than is coming off your driveway. It is a byproduct of combustion, and it is everywhere. This legislation would ban a frequently used commercial pavement sealer, one that's popular and effective. We are not aware of any complaints made against this product to DEQ or any other state regulatory agency. We are not aware of any incidents where a negative health outcome has been directly linked to this product. Proponents of this bill argue that pavement sealers are a significant source of harmful PAHs in the environment. However, the science does not support that claim. In fact, PAHs found in pavement sealer represent less than 1% of all other PAHs in the environment. That might explain why in cases where there have been a ban of pavement sealers, there have been no discernible impact on the level of PAH. And I have a scientist here to speak to that. An additional concern that we have, Mr. Chairman, is the bill lacks any sort of enforcement mechanism. It doesn't task an entity with enforcing this. It doesn't outline an appeals process. It doesn't even identify an authority who you would call if you're suspecting someone's violating this provision. We're concerned that small businesses across Virginia would get ensnarled by these violations and penalties and not have anywhere to turn to remedy that situation. For all those reasons, Mr. Chairman, we respectfully ask that you oppose the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Thorpe. And you have your witness?
Yes, sir.
Please. Hi, could you introduce yourself and your credentials and where are you from?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Dr. Robert DeMott. I'm a toxicologist with Ramboll, an environmental engineering and consulting firm.
Very pleased. Please present your testimony.
Thank you. I've been directing studies on PAHs in getting into waterways for more than 25 years, starting with comparing the inputs from buildings, roads, and driveways and parking lots at federal facilities. Since 2005, I've worked on evaluating the PAH levels entering different creek systems in Austin, Texas, in conjunction with a product ban on the use of certain pavement sealers in that city. We sampled the same areas in 2005, before the ban, 2008, 2 years after the ban, and 2023, 17 years after the ban. Looking at 18 different locations, we found that the ban did not yield a noticeable reduction in PAH levels across all of those creek systems. In addition, the chemical fingerprint indicative of the complexity of the sources was not shifted, indicating the loss of one of the particular sources. As you heard, PAHs are ubiquitous due to human activities because they're a byproduct of combustion. They're related to vehicle use, to home heating, energy generation, and a narrowly targeted approach focusing on only one source is unlikely to yield a substantial change to the environment writ large. The same USGS research group that quantified the amount of PAHs released from the pavement sealer on parking lots also gave us the numbers that we have with regard to how much is transported in the atmosphere, and it was US EPA researchers who documented the amount released from vehicles. So with all these sources out there, the ability of a narrowly targeted product ban to yield results is going to be very difficult. And I would leave you with two thoughts. This bill focused on one product is not likely to yield observable changes and improvements, but the energy and the focus on PAHs brought by all the people involved is a starting point to evaluate approaches that would be much more broad-based and dedicated towards a successful endpoint. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
For your
question.
testimony. We have Senator
question.
Hackworth has a question. Oh, excuse me, one person online? Okay, go ahead with that first.
Kirk O'Reilly, you can unmute and please make sure your camera's on.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Kirk O'Reilly, and I'm an environmental chemist with the company Exponent, and I'm a subject matter expert on sources of PAHs in the environment, and especially the aquatic environment. Since 2009, I have been working with PCTC, or Pavement Coating Technology Council, and they asked me to evaluate the studies that the USGS and others have done to assess the role of these sealants as a source of PAHs relative to other PAHs. Somebody mentioned that there's a series of articles where summarizing USGS studies, and there's actually a kind of parallel sets of articles where we've had a long-term technical discussion between people who agree with their hypothesis and those who don't. And I sent a bibliography of that to the committee members yesterday that sort of covers that. All the science doesn't say one thing. So I know don't have much time today, but I'd just like to sort of summarize sort of 4 fundamental flaws in the USGS's approach to try to characterize the source of PAHs in waterways and urban sediments. One, we've been studying the sources of PAHs in the environment for over 50 years, and as others have said, they come from all sources of combustion, and they're also found in petroleum. So we understand the role of things like automobile emissions and vehicle exhaust, and industrial emissions, forest fires, wood burning. So in my opinion, the USGS sort of ignored all that. And then the way we evaluate sources of chemicals in these complex mixtures is a field of science we call environmental forensics. It's sort of easy to apply, easy to misapply, but difficult to understand all the components of that. And I think they did not appropriately apply environmental forensics. A key part of what we've been doing, what they've done and what we've done is looking at various modeling approaches where you really have to understand, I'll just simply call these mixing models. What mix of sources of contaminants result in what you find, let's say a sediment sample? And if you don't understand what all those sources are, you basically, if the inputs to the model are wrong, the outputs are meaningless. And we have a number of papers which raises questions about that.
All right.
Inputs. And then finally, let me just finally say that when we apply these correctly, our conclusion is it does not support their hypothesis that these are important sources of PAHs. And with that, I've again shared some information with the committee, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time to testify. We appreciate it very much. We had a question from Senator Hackworth.
Yes, speak to the bill when the time comes.
Okay, we'll take questions first, and then we'll come back to you, Senator Hackworth. We have Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron. When we heard from someone who was just testifying, it was indicated that there's no enforcement mechanism in place in the bill that would help to ensure that we are addressing the concern of the PAH in our sealants. Can you speak to that, please?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I would answer the senator by noting that my understanding is the local Commonwealth attorney would be responsible for working on enforcement issues, but I would defer to counsel on that question.
Okay. Senator Hashmi?
Mr. Chairman, it's that I think that understanding is correct. It's not necessarily clear in the bill, but the provisions within that chapter does align with that, saying, you know, the law enforcement, every law enforcement of the Commonwealth generally is the enforcer.
Thank you.
We have next on the list Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was curious, the gentleman that spoke before, who did y'all represent? And I'd like to ask a question of your scientist as well.
Mr. Chairman, Alex Thorpe with Commonwealth Strategy Group on behalf of the Pavement Coatings Technology Council. They are a national trade association representing multiple facets of the pavement sealing industry.
Okay. And this is your Mr. Chairman, this is your expert. You came from
Yes,
Texas on this, is that correct? Y'all hear me?
Yeah.
It's on.
It says it's on.
It says it's on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was curious, you mentioned that you did studies on creeks or a creek at certain intervals. Does this stuff, there's certain compounds that once it gets into the water, and particularly in a creek, it settles in the bottom. How do you particularly cleanse a creek bottom of a substance like this?
This is actually the one big advantage and why we studied it in Austin. Unlike a lot of the rivers and streams in the east, in this area, the storm systems scour the bottom, and it's a flat rock bottom to the creeks. So in between years, the sediment actually moves away. When we go to collect our sediments in 2005, 2008, and 2023, they are fresh new sediment from the recent wash-off into the stream. So it's not a collection like from the bottom up. It's a new batch.
Mr. Chairman, and how do you determine that? How do you determine that it's a fresh sample of PAH or whatever the chemical is? How do you know it's not a residual that just stays in the bottom, is my question.
Right. Many of these stream beds actually scour out, so it's just a rock bottom where the sediment is gone, and we come back and we see that there's new sediment that's deposited after the storms.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Director Rollban a question?
Director Rollban, are you here? There he is.
I saw him hiding all the way over there. Excuse me? Yes, I'm finished with them. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DEQ was mentioned, and so you are our scientist for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Can you just tell us the issue here that we're dealing with, and if this is an issue, and so forth and so on? Give us some facts about it, if you will.
Sure. So we have no position at this time. This was studied by DEQ a few years ago before I was there. And in that study of existing literature, there was not a conclusion that was made because there is conflicting literature. We don't have the scientific expertise to actually do our own science. So there would be a cost to that. So the last study was simply done with our own resources, reviewing existing literature, and found literature on both sides. There is definite evidence that PAH is harmful to a lot of aquatic organisms. And the question that's been discussed is what we found in the literature, which is there are multiple sources of it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
So what is conclusive is that it's harmful to aquatic organisms, and you say there are multiple sources. Is there any doubt in your mind that there are high concentrations in this product?
No, there's no doubt that there's high concentration of the product. The question is how much leaves where it's applied and goes downstream.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Rollban. We have two more questions, and then we'll go to Senator Hackworth. Senator Hashmi, you had another question?
Thank you. Yes, I did have a question for our scientist, but I think our patron can address this, so I won't require that he come back up. And to Delegate Tran, your bill is acknowledging that pH is harmful to the environment. And so I don't think it's a dispute that there are many products and many sources of this contaminant and that it is affecting rivers and streams as well as our atmosphere. I think what you are trying to do through this bill is to address the harm that we see directly on our families because of the use in driveway sealants as well as in parking lots. And so my question is, what is the research showing on the impact that the sealant might be having on families that live in close proximity because of their driveways, particularly on children? Is there an increased risk of cancer as a result of this?
Delegate Tran.
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the senator by noting that there are several studies completed within the last 5 years, even that demonstrate the harm that PAH sealants can cause on people. So, for example, MALA 2022, many PAHs are widely referred to carcinogens. They pose a significant danger to human health and the well-being of humans. Skin, lung, pancreas, esophagus, bladder, colon, female breasts are numerous organs prone to tumor development due to long-term PAH exposure. So that's one example, for instance. And I cited earlier, but just don't see quickly in my notes, here we go. Also, McCormick 2022, a different study. Our results indicate the presence of coal tar-based pavement sealants is associated with significant increases in estimated excess lifetime cancer risk for nearby residents. Much of this calculated excess risk arises from exposure to PAH in early childhood, 0 to 6 years. So it's 2 examples for you.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should move to a motion. Even our delegate.
Question, and then Senator Hackworth had some comments.
No, I was just going to speak to the bill at this point.
What?
I move to report.
What?
I move to report the bill.
Just a second. Senator Hackworth, you had some comments you wanted to make earlier.
I will be brief. So I guess my concern with this bill, Mr. Chair, is, when you start singling out one specific type of sealant here, what happens when, you're in your neighborhood and you're sealing your driveway and then people come and say, oh, you're using the bad stuff, this is the bad stuff. And then you've got to kind of prove it's not the bad stuff. I'm in construction, and I remember the age when they had Drive It and EFS and as exterior on homes, and they were a flawed system, and there were several lawsuits on it. And then they fixed that problem. But even today, when we are talking to residential customers about EFS and Drive It, they will say, oh, that's the bad stuff. It's going to rot my house out when it's been fixed. So I think that, we've heard from our own DEQ, and we've heard from scientists that this is not, there's no position, there's, pH levels in a lot of things. And I guess I'm really just wondering why I've not been invited to Senator Stewart's barbecue, because I would take the PAH levels to eat his oysters. But, I think that, one of the, I think it would cause a lot of unneeded scrutiny in the industry with this, and so that's my concerns on the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hackworth. All right, I believe we had someone who wanted to make a motion.
I made it.
We have a motion to report, and we have a second. Does this need to go? Oh, I thought you had a motion, Senator Perry. I'm sorry. Did you have something? Okay. Let's see. This bill does not need to go to. It does not need to go to finance. So we have a motion and a second to report. Could you open the roll, please?
Ayes 11, noes 3.
Ayes 11, noes 3. The bill reports, and I will be speaking with Director Roban about getting some further information on some of the other sources of this obviously difficult chemical compound. Thank you so much, Delegate Tran. Next, Delegate Sullivan, do you have a committee you're trying to chair? Or
I'm not sharing it. I've shared the sub. I'm happy to yield to my colleague.
There we go.
We all like to be in the same.
We have Delegate Lopez up next.
And you have to be there at some point, Senator.
In about 20 minutes, I have to be there. So go ahead, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is HB 107, the EV Rural Infrastructure Program. You have seen this bill in the form of the Chair's SB 457, which you passed 15-0. We all know that the world's major automakers are moving to electric over the next decade, and EV sales nationally and in Virginia are on a steady and steep rise. And Virginians are soon going to see a dramatic growth in the number of EV Level 3 charging stations around the state as a result of the federal government's EV infrastructure program, which is known as NEVI. But all of those chargers are going to be installed only along the major travel corridors, and they'll have to be within 1 mile of them. So they'll all be at interchanges on Route 95, 64, 66, 85, 81, and 77. We all know Virginia really is a huge state, and most of Virginia, and certainly millions of Virginians, live and work not anywhere near 1 mile from any of these major corridors. So HB 107 is meant to fill that gap because it's important that all Virginians have charging infrastructure available to them as EVs become more and more prevalent. I want to add that it's also very important that tourists from other states who drive their EVs here to visit our beautiful rural areas we don't want them to be deterred by not being able to charge their cars in Virginia. We all know the statistics, the 1 million people every year who visit New River Valley Park and Trail, 1.4 million people who visit the Shenandoah National Park every year, or the 80,000 folks who like to hike Old Rag in Madison County and then visit the nearby wineries. All will be increasing their demand for EV charging capabilities near all of those important tourist attractions for us. So building out our EV charging infrastructure is important to our rural economy. It's important to attracting tourists and creating, of course, the good-paying jobs that installing and maintaining these chargers will create. So this program is meant to be an accelerator, in a matter of speaking, for what the market is already demanding, and it's going to support developers and make them more willing to invest in charging infrastructure in low-income rural areas. Because, as I said, we don't want all the chargers to be in urban areas. We don't want them all to be near the highways. We need to be putting them in the entire state. I hasten to add there is money in the House budget for this program. This committee has seen this bill before, and I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Sullivan. Did you have a substitute to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there is
an
an amendment, which I think Council has.
Could you report the amendment, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chair, this line amendment replaces the second enactment clause so that it will read that no locality shall be eligible for electric vehicle charging infrastructure pursuant to the Electric Vehicle Rural Infrastructure Fund created by this Act if funds from the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program established pursuant to Public Law 117-58 or any other federal grant program become available to and are received by the Commonwealth and are used for the creation of new public electric vehicle charging infrastructure more than 1 mile from any alternative fuel corridor in such locality.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the substitute? If not,
yes, ma'am.
Get a motion.
Mr.
Have a question?
Chairman.
Senator Suderline.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the delegate, he said it was in the House budget. The House budget was conformed to the Senate budget earlier today. So in the current House budget, as it looks like the Senate budget, is it actually in that budget as well?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
ahead, Senator.
I'm not in a position to inject myself into the ongoing negotiations between the chambers, but there's money in the original budget that the House passed. What's happening as it moves its way toward conference is beyond my pay grade.
Is it in ours?
All right.
All right, thank you.
And if I might, Mr. Chair, the amendment, just so I can explain it so everyone understands it, the concern expressed by some was if and when the feds ever get to installing chargers in more rural parts of Virginia, the notion was at that point this program ought to end and we should spend the Fed's money instead of our own. But in the absence of that,
in terms of the substitute, I was very interested in that because that could get at having charging stations in our state parks so that people could visit them instead of seeing some of the rural avoidance we're seeing where people are reluctant to go to a park if they have an all-electric vehicle. Senator Favoli, you had a question.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we should move the amendment,
Okay.
and I will do so.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. The bill as amended is before us. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in support of the bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Greg Abe from Gentulak on behalf of CSG. Almost all of you have heard this bill in one committee or another, in 1 year or another. Almost all of you have voted for this bill. Came out of the Senate unanimously, I believe, last year. This bill just provides the small nudge that it will take to get the necessary infrastructure into forgotten parts of Virginia when it comes to EV infrastructure. This will allow us to spur to meet that demand side, because right now folks in rural Virginia are afraid to move towards EVs. Wherever you are in EVs, wherever you are in clean cars, it doesn't matter. This is about investing in rural Virginia and making sure we don't get left behind. So we appreciate your past support and we encourage your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Habib. In support? Yes. Okay, please introduce yourself. Let us know who you're with.
Yes, my name is Thomas Turner with Conservatives for Clean Energy. We also support this bill as the reason stated above and the opportunities for rural Virginia and tourism.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
All right. No one here in the audience to speak in opposition. Anyone online? All right. We have operate on a motion.
It has to be.
We have a motion and a second to report and refer to finance. Yep. And if you could open the roll, vote yea if you're in favor of reporting and referring to finance, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Good luck in finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
It'll be a fun morning.
Delegate Lopez, you're up next, followed by Delegate Hope, if he's still here.
He left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll try to be as brief as possible. In 2014, 300,000 residents of 9 counties outside of Charleston, West Virginia, metro area, were left without drinking water for more than 1 week. Why? Because in what was known as the 2014 Elk River chemical spill, approximately 7,500 gallons of a chemical called MCHM had leaked from a damaged above-ground storage tank, went into the Elk River and into the local water supply. A 2016 DEQ, DOH, and DEM report mandated by the General Assembly concluded that there were gaps in Virginia's regulation of chemical storage tanks. And yet, Virginia, in the last 10 years, since the spill, has not done nearly enough to regulate large chemical above-ground storage tanks, and the specter of our own Elk River spill still looms. These tanks have the potential to cause a great deal of damage and harm to local communities, though thankfully none were as significant as Elk River. DEQ's own database of spills showed more than 4,800 chemical spills from tanks between 2020 and 2000 and 2020, about 230 per year. Our rural communities can't afford to take the hits, whether economic or public health related, from mistakes like these. The substitute language that we've worked on with this has the support of the Virginia Manufacturing Association, DEQ, the Agribusiness Council. I'm looking at Hackworth. He's staring at me. It's amazing. And the League of Conservation Voters. Let me repeat that. The Virginia Manufacturers Association, Agribusiness Council, League of Conservation Voters, and DEQ. What the bill does. I was going to finance.
Let's find out if there's any questions first. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Is there? Okay, we got a thumbs up from some of our friends in the agriculture world. And
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassey, Virginia Manufacturers Association. You've seen us here in opposition for this for 7 years. What's changed, everybody should be aware, is a pending federal rule on this, on the hazardous substances. That will have to be in effect by September of this year, and we are codifying that pending federal rule in a very unique way. And there's some enhanced reporting, some enhanced access to property, and there's some enhanced penalties for bad actors. And there's also going to be some guidance from DEQ that will incorporate what we're solving with the West Virginia problem, at least we've attempted to in the previous years, which is human error. And there will be some training requirements. So for those reasons, we support the bill.
Great. Thank you so much. And all right.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver, Virginia Agribusiness Council. Like Mr. Vassy, we've been up here opposing this bill for 7 years straight. Very happy that we could come to an agreement on this very important issue. Would like to thank Delegate Lopez for all of his work on this, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we've been up here for, no, I'm just kidding, but I had to take a chance to, this doesn't happen often. So Virginia League of Conservation Voters, we support the bill.
Great.
Nathan Thompson, James River Association, we support the bill.
Great.
Mr. Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network, 7 years supporting this bill and happy to see it moving.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, Brandon Bull, Policy Director at the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. We just want to really thank Delegate Lopez for working with us on the amendments, and we are good with this language.
Thank you so much. Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this fine bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
All right. Could I have a motion to report and refer to finance?
Already made it.
All right. We have a motion and a second to report and refer to finance. To open the roll. Yay if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. We have, let's see, next on the list I have is Delegate Anthony. Is that you? There you are. That is me. Delegate Anthony, you're new this year?
I am new this year.
And could you tell us where you're from, please?
Norfolk.
From Norfolk?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Senate.
Thank you.
All right. Could you, let's see, we have, you have House Bill
1002.
1002. If you could let us know all about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. HB 1002 codifies the division of renewable energy and energy efficiency into the Virginia Code to track federal funding opportunities for the state's energy efficiency goals. We already know that Virginia Energy already does a great job in identifying and securing federal funding opportunities. They secured over $1 billion of funds already. This just puts it into code. This bill also complements what Senator Hashmi put in for a budget amendment for the Department of Energy to secure and maximize federal grants and build relationships with those agencies and offering grants and supporting economic development and renewable energy industries and their relevant supply chains. It also supports Senator Surivel and Delegate Lopez's bills that establishes a climate finance authority that can help secure federal funds through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So I hope it'll be the will of the committee to report.
Thank you, Delegate Anthony. Any questions from the committee? All right. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to speak in support of the bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition?
If there's anyone online to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
All right. I believe we have a motion from Senator Suderline.
I'll move to report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report. All in favor vote aye. Opposed, no.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Ayes 13, noes 1. Congratulations, Delegate Anthony.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I believe we are out of patrons who are here. What we have left is Delegate Krizak's.
Weaver's out there.
Oh, Weaver's here. Okay. My goodness.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I was just sitting quietly.
And as a reward, if the bill passes, you get to go to finance.
In the morning. Considering the result of the last few bills, yeah, do not pass go, I guess.
All right.
Before you, I have, Mr. Chairman, I have 1460, which creates the Virginia Verified Meat Certification Program. whereby a product that is born, raised, fed, and processed in the Commonwealth of Virginia is eligible for the certificate. Basically, it's a marketing certificate that essentially VDAX will oversee the the third-party entities that would be administering the program, very similar to like the Cattlemen's Association or one of the breed associations would create this program, and then it would just be verified by VDAX, and that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Are there questions for Delegate Weaver? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Come on up.
Jim Riddell with the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. We support the bill. This is a voluntary program that basically allows producers to certify their beef is raised, produced, processed here in Virginia, with exceptions if you live on the state line. And it's supported by the Virginia Department of Agriculture as well, and it's provided by affidavit. So we support the bill. Thank you, sponsor.
Next up.
Mr. Chairman, Jake Tabor, Virginia Farm Bureau, and we support the bill.
Thank you so much. Anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, the bill's before us. We have a motion?
Move to report and send to finance.
We have a motion to report and refer to finance. Mr. Clerk, would you open the roll, please? Vote yea if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Why isn't mine working?
Are you up or down?
I'm up.
Ayes 14, no zero. Madam Favola, your vote will be
Ayes
noted.
14, no zero. I believe they have you, Senator Favola.
Yes, they do.
So I think we're good there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Wiebert. And I think we can handle Delegate Hope's bill without him being here. This is similar to one that I had, although it's a better bill, and I hope it does better in finance than mine did. But at any rate, no, I just want to leave it as it is. I'm not worried about it. This is requires the Department of Forestry, in coordination with a technical advisory committee composed of stakeholders, to develop a forest land and urban tree canopy conservation plan no later than November 1st, 2026, and update such plan every 5 years thereafter. The bill requires the department to post and maintain on its website the most recent version of the plan and submit the plan to the governor and chairman of the House Committee on Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources, and the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources no later than November 30th, 2026, and November 30th, every 5 years thereafter. It passed the House 99-0. Is there anyone on the committee who wants to make a comment on the bill, since there's no one to question?
Mr. Chair, I will just say that this is a really good bill. Again, it's a plan trying to conserve trees or to build up a tree canopy is a very good thing. I don't know how anybody could disagree with this. So I am going to move that we report the bill, and it does have to go to finance. So I will move that we report and refer to finance.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to report and refer the bill to finance. Would you open the roll, please? Vote yea if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. The bill reports. Was Delegate Bulova on this way back? I was just told that he might be.
Mr. Chair, we are hunting them down right now.
You're hunting him down? He's on his way? Good.
Yeah, the Creasy bill.
Yeah, and that's complicated.
Yeah, it is. It's complicated.
We'll stand at ease till Delegate Bulova arrives.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305.
All right. Mike, could you introduce yourself and give the testimony you would have been giving had Delegate Bulova been here? And why don't you just tell us about the bill?
Yeah, he has more detail probably than I do, but I can certainly, I think, give us the gist of the bill and talk about why it's a very good thing to do. I'm Mike Carlin on behalf of the Coalition for Consumer Choices. This is 6 regional chambers of commerce and 10 statewide and national associations who've come together to support a solution for the problem that we're having with our landfills in Virginia. We have a lot of recyclable material that's heading to landfills, and it's preventable, but we need to do a much better job with recycling. And the vision of our coalition is to be a top-tier state, to have Virginia be a top-tier state for recycling. What this bill does is it takes a first major step by creating the Virginia Recycling Development Center. This will be the brain of where all of this activity takes place in the DEQ. It'll be the research arm. It will be the place where you're connecting folks who have a stake in recycling at a place where we can make a plan for how we can recycle. We're recovering from 2018 development where China stopped taking a lot of our recyclable material, and so Virginia's not unique. Other states are experiencing this too. We want to get ahead of it. We want to create this opportunity to lead, for Virginia to lead. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. I know there are others here in support of the bill as well.
Colleagues, do you have any questions? Do we have any other speakers in support of the bill? Anybody in the audience who wants to come forward? Yes, it does.
Hi, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Cassidy Taylor on behalf of both the Prince William Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Williamsburg Chamber of Commerce, also members of the Coalition for Consumer Choices, and we support this bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in favor? Staff just told me that there is a substitute to this bill. Are we, staff, is there a fresh substitute or are we conforming?
Madam Chair, we're going to release it right now online, but the substitute just requires the Director of DEQ to appoint and supervise the Director of the Center rather than the Secretary for Natural and Historic Resources. It specifies a date of November 1 in each odd-numbered year for the required report to the Governor and General Assembly. It moves from October 1, 2024 to January 1, 2025, the date by which the Advisory Committee shall convene to make recommendations. And it also removes a provision stating that the Center shall recommend for adoption by the Virginia Waste Management Board any standards that shall include a robust stakeholder engagement process to enter into an agreement for recycling services.
Those don't seem like major amendments, but they nonetheless are important. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Yes, we can. Is it amendment in the nature of a substitute? It's a substitute. And there's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, the substitute is before us. We've already taken public comment here in favor of the bill. Is there anybody online that wants to speak in favor? Okay. Anybody in opposition to this bill? Anybody online in opposition? Okay, colleagues, I think this has to be re-referred to Finance. I'd like a motion to adopt the substitute and re-refer to Finance.
Move to report with substitute and re-refer to Finance.
Thank you. Thank you. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay, that goes. The next bill that Delegate Bulova has is HB 420. I'm going to ask staff to make that presentation, and then I'll take comment. Colleagues.
I don't think they can present bills. They can sit there and summarize what the bill does.
Okay. Staff, you're going to. Would you be willing to read the summary?
Madam Chair, HB 420, it authorizes the governor to provide funding and execute necessary agreements to allow the temporary operation of any Virginia property controlled by the National Park Service in the event of a federal government shutdown. This authority shall be contingent upon the U.S. Department of the Interior executing an agreement which authorizes the Commonwealth to operate the property. The bill states that the funds may come from the State Park Conservation Resources Fund, voluntary donations, funds allocated to the Department of Conservation and Recreation, or other sources. However, the bill clarifies that no funds originally allocated from the general fund shall be used to operate a federal park for more than 21 days without the approval of the General Assembly.
Okay, we don't have a current law now that prohibits the use of state money for a federal park. This sounds like a very good idea. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Okay, hearing none, may I ask?
Finance.
It does, but let's ask who's in favor of this. Anybody here in the audience would like to speak in favor of this bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Bowles with McGuire Woods, representing Delaware North, who runs the concessions at some of the national parks in Virginia, and we're very supportive of this legislation.
Good, thank you. Does anybody else like to speak in favor of the bill? Is anybody here in opposition to the bill?
If there's anyone online to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
Okay, hearing none. I would like a motion to, if it is the will of the committee, to report this bill as amended. Oh, this wasn't amended. Report the bill and re-refer to finance.
I just made it.
Second. Sorry. Clerk, open the roll.
Take a deep breath.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Is Delegate Bloxham, are you prepared to present? I have 14.
I'll do my best, Madam Chair.
1466?
Yes, ma'am. House Bill
Okay.
1466.
Okay. And somebody should get Delegate Krizak here because that's a complicated bill. So maybe we can. Thank you.
They're finishing up now.
Delegate Bloxham, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill was brought to me by some farmers on the Eastern Shore. We actually have a single source aquifer, so we're trying to entice farmers to use farm ponds, surface water. And the problem was that every time they went to do it, Mines and Minerals would come in and inspect them. And they're not set up to be inspected by Mines and Minerals. So what we tried to do, and this is a compromise between Farm Bureau, the Department of Mines and Minerals, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to give our farmers a chance, a 6-month exemption to dig a farm pond. The big problem was you couldn't move the sand. So they dig a pond, and if you go to almost any farm on the Eastern Shore, you'll see a big sand pile next to the pond. And they just were not allowed to move it. So this kind of gives them a 6-month window to dig the pond so they can use surface water instead of well water. And that's simply what it does. Farm Bureau liked it so much, they asked for it to go statewide. So this actually is a statewide exemption for farmers. And that's the crux of the bill.
The Department of Energy has to update its regulations. Let me just ask if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this.
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Okay, and while the Farm Bureau is coming up, Senator Stewart.
Madam Chair, thank you. This is a great idea, and I'm really glad you brought it because we have been struggling with the Potomac Aquifer. The Eastern Shore draws their water from the Potomac Aquifer as well, and it's becoming a real problem. And this is a practical, creative solution and a really good bill.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau, we support the bill.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody in opposition in the audience?
If there's anyone online to speak in opposition, raise your hand.
Colleagues, do you have comments? Would you like to share them, or you have concerns?
I just want to talk amongst themselves.
Okay, the motion has been made to report the bill. It does not have to go to finance, and there was a second. Will the clerk open the roll? Okay,
Madam Chair.
your bill reports.
Ayes 14, no zero.
14, no zero. Okay, Delegate Martinez is not here, but we did that. That was the cat clause, okay? Cat bill. The only bill left that I can see is Delegate Krizak's. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay. And it's a fairly complicated bill. Go ahead. I really would like Delegate Krizak here to.
Madam Chair, I've contacted his office. They are messaging him to come to the committee.
Okay, well, maybe I'm going to ask the clerk to just explain what's in the bill. Colleagues, I turn your attention to House Bill 1157.
Come on, MJ.
Madam Chair, the bill as it is before you now, it just requires the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Department of Environmental Quality, the Department of Historic Resources, and the Virginia Marine Resources Commission to establish policies and procedures for consulting with federally recognized tribal nations in the Commonwealth when evaluating certain permits and reviews relating to environmental, cultural, or historic resources that potentially impact those federally recognized tribal nations in the Commonwealth. The bill directs the Secretary of the Commonwealth to designate an ombudsman for tribal consultation to facilitate communication and consultation with federally recognized tribal nations in the Commonwealth, and requires the ombudsman to develop by September 1, 2024, a list of localities in which federally recognized tribal nations in the Commonwealth shall be consulted to effectuate the provisions of the bill. This bill codifies Executive Order 82 from 2021.
Thank you. And now Delegate Krizak is here, and General Counsel just.
Thank you, Madam
Welcome.
Chair. I have a substitute before you.
Okay, colleagues. Okay, motion has been made and seconded to adopt the substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The substitute's adopted. Go ahead.
So House Bill 1157 requires the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I ran up the stairs. The Department of Environmental Quality, the Department of Historic Resources, and the Virginia Marine Resources Commission to establish policies and procedures for consulting with federally recognized tribal nations when evaluating permits relating to environmental, cultural, or historic resources with the potential to impact the tribes. During this legislative process, I want to say we've worked really extensively and well with the administration on this bill's language. And these final changes address, I think, the majority of their concerns, and we've made changes along the way. The first changes in the substitute are technical in nature. Line 29, it references the newly created DEQ, DHR, and VMRC statutory requirements. And second, in Section B, starting on line 156, removes the reference to the Department of Aviation environmental reviews, which is no longer included in the bill. That was the administration that had requested that. On lines 165 and 555, we changed the amount for groundwater withdrawal permits that require consultation from 1 million gallons per day to 365 million gallons per year to better reflect DEQ practice on monitoring groundwater withdrawal. On line 562, we adjusted the time frame for the tribal ombudsman to develop a list of localities of tribal interest for consultation from September 1, 24 to January 1, 25. And finally, we added a portion to the last enactment clause on line 569 to acknowledge efforts when the Commonwealth is already involved in tribal consultation as part of a federal process. A policy of consultation will improve and foster a relationship based on mutual respect between the tribal nations and the Commonwealth on a government-to-government basis. It mirrors the existing requirements that federal agencies already have with tribal nations. It's really a win-win for the Commonwealth, private developers, and the nations.
Hold on,
Provides project predictability. Yeah.
Excuse me. I would ask staff to put the proper bill number up on the board. It's HB 1157. No worries, but I let it go too long. Go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, it's just, this is really a win-win, and it's, okay, I see I'm getting that's not for me, that's for me. Anyway, there you go, it's a great bill. I've got a lot of good people here to talk, and it's something that you guys have seen with Senator McClellan had it a couple times, and it got bogged down in the House. But this one's really been a good effort. We've really worked hard with the administration, and they're here. You think you should talk, hear from them?
Is the administration in support of this?
Well, they'll tell you what they'll tell you. So, but this, I also got Chief Frank Adams from Upper Mattaponi's here, Chief Steve Adkins, if they're still here. Yes, they are. They've been here the whole time from the Chickahominy and a few others. And the administration's got some people. I think I see Julie Langen's here from the Department of Historic Resources. So it has been an effort of love, really, to put this together, and everybody's been really helpful. And it's really important for Virginia tribes, and I'm honored to be the person that they've chosen to bring this forth. So thank you very much.
Well, good work, Delegate Krizak. I'm reading this to mean that a framework is established for developing the relationship, and you've identified areas that the tribes feel are critical.
Exactly.
And there'll continue to be reviews, though. Am I
correct?
I mean, this is sort of an ongoing.
Absolutely. Yep.
So the plans could change, or like the millions gallons of water that might change over time, or.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have. I mean, that's one of the great things about having an ombudsman there. That will have that dialogue will be established.
Okay. All right. Because there's a lot to read and digest in here, but I'm asking those questions just to provide me with comfort and maybe a better understanding. Do you have anything more you'd like to add? I can take public comment.
I think it's better to hear from the experts and the tribal nations.
For those who are in favor of the bill, please come forward. I think the bill's in good shape, but while you're on your way, Senator Stewart.
Delegate Krizak, thanks. I just wanted to ask a question because I got a letter from the gentleman with the Patawomac tribe in Stafford County, and then I heard also some consternation about the Pamunkey tribe. And I used to represent Stafford, but I certainly have the Pamunkey in my area now, and they're concerned that they're being excluded from this bill. So can you help me with that?
The Pamunkey are certainly not excluded. This is about the federal tribes, and the Pamunkey are a federally recognized tribe. So maybe I haven't heard any of that before. Maybe some of the folks here can testify to that. But this is not. I would be surprised if anybody from the Pamunkey. In fact, I think representatives are here from the Pamunkey.
I'm not saying I oppose the bill. I just want to learn.
Yeah, that's fine.
Senator, my name is Marian Burkheiser. I'm with Cultural Heritage Partners, and I represent the federally recognized tribal nations. The confusion around the Pamunkey being left out has to do with the Indigenous Trust Fund that was established a couple of sessions ago. This bill does not make any changes to that fund, which was set up to share casino revenue. If the Pamunkey tribe start a casino, they would share revenue with the other 6 tribes. But this bill makes no changes to that section. It's just repeated in the bill text. So I think some folks were confused about that. The Pamunkey would be consulted just like all federally recognized tribes.
So then just help me, why do we leave out the state recognized tribes and just have the federally recognized? And again, I'm not opposed to the bill, I just want to learn.
No, sure. This bill codifies the executive order that was just for the federally recognized tribes, and it's meant to mirror the federal requirements. So the federal government consults with the tribes, federally recognized tribes now, and that's what we're doing to extend that to the state. So the state recognized tribes are not included. They could certainly be added later.
Madam Chair.
Senator Stewart.
And I apologize, I
that's fine.
can't hear as well as I should. That wasn't clear to me why we're leaving out the other tribes that we as a Commonwealth recognize. It's a simple question. Why do we leave them out?
Sure.
Six other tribes that the state recognizes, correct?
No.
How many? 3 other that the state recognizes that, I thought it was 6.
Four.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's somewhere between 3 and 6
4.
that the state recognizes as a tribe, but yet we're going to leave. I just want to understand why we're leaving them out.
Sure. Good question.
Sure. Did you want to respond to that? Okay.
I mean, what I would say is that right now, as it stands right now, they're not. Obviously, no one has this this consultation process is not even in place, right? So this gets the federally recognized ones in place because it's modeled after what's happening around the country with other federally recognized tribes vis-a-vis the states that they're located in. So it doesn't mean that the state tribes are treated any as lesser tribes or anything like that. It's just that this is about the federally recognized tribes, and it will help them because by starting this process and having a person the ombudsman person will be a point person for helping the state tribes to help them towards federal recognition as well. So the end goal is for all the state tribes to get federal recognition. It wasn't too many years ago when we only had state tribes, and then the Pamunkey got their federal recognition, and then soon after that, the other 6 tribes that are federally recognized, and you have 2 of the tribal leaders here to speak, and I think they could also answer this question and give you a better perspective from the tribal side. But I know that they're very inclusive, and there's a real brotherhood of all the tribes in Virginia working together, state and federal. So this will benefit both in a sense.
Thank you. Okay, we will take other speakers. Welcome and thank you for coming.
If there's anyone online to speak in favor, raise your hand.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen R. Adkins. I'm chief of the Chickahominy Indian Tribe. So, Madam Chair and members of the committee, it's an honor to speak with you today. To answer Senator Stewart's question, federally recognized tribes have a unique relationship with the federal government. It's a government-to-government relationship, which is extended only to federally recognized tribes. Now, this is constitutionally mandated, so that's why you saw the state tribes excluded from this bill. This conforms with the federal government guidelines regarding state-to-state relationship with federally recognized tribes. We, in fact, are sovereign nations within this Commonwealth. I'd like to make a couple of statements about the bill. There is some concern about the fact that if human remains are discovered, unearthed, that the tribes are incapable of making a decision on where those remains should go, who would have the custodial oversight of those remains. And I would submit that for the last 100 years, these tribes have worked together. They've been able to gain consensus. I think it's kind of ridiculous to assume, naive to assume that Southern tribes will always have a unanimous opinion. It's equally naive to assume that we can't reach a consensus. And the reason I couched it in the last 100 years, 1924, the Racial Integrity Act was imposed on us, which was accepted by the legislature, the executive branch, the judicial branch, and colleges and universities loved it, but it excluded us from a paper perspective of living in the Commonwealth. It said there were no Indians in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That happened the same year that Native tribes were given citizenship in the United States. My dad was born in 1914, my mom in 1919, so they were first generation American citizens by that act of 1924. I'm a second generation American, so Walter Plecker deemed it appropriate to cover those gaps that were left in the Jim Crow laws when blacks were excluded. He said, whoops, made a mistake. We've got to include these Indians and other people of color. And as I said, the state embraced it. So we have learned to live together, to gain consensus. So if this is a sticky point for you, I would submit that we are capable of being custodians of human remains and decide among ourselves who has that custodial right. I thank you so much for your time and your attention.
We thank you for the clarification. I think we're asking questions to learn more. We're not predisposed, I don't think, against this ombudsman model. So just so you know that. Yes, sir, welcome.
Madam Chair, rest of the committee, my name is Frank Adams. I'm chief of the Upper Mattaponi Tribe in King William County, Virginia. And I'm just urging you to support this bill. because Virginia's in a very unique situation. 5, 6 years ago, all of a sudden you got 7 federally recognized tribes within the boundaries of Virginia, and we still have 4 state-recognized tribes that are making progress to becoming federally recognized. So we have the distinction on the East Coast that Virginia has most of the tribes. And we are all trying to develop our tribal governments because we are sovereign, and our economic development. And we're certainly not against economic development. We just think it's wise that if we know something is buried in the ground, that you ask us before you start digging, so you won't have to shut your operation down, like has happened in King William County 2 weeks ago when they dug up 3 native remains in the Sweet Sioux solar farm that they were putting in. And so work just stopped. So that stops everybody. That costs money when you stop an operation after you set up. So we do ask you to support this bill.
I just have a question, and I do think that there's a lot of interest in supporting the bill. So just take our questions as inquiries so we can sort of learn. I guess my question is, whatever the rules of the game might be in terms of getting permits before, a developer wants to go forward, or even the state wants to go forward in maybe building a road, sort of the process, I think, would be public and published somewhere. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the bill does. It requires these agencies, just in the, DCR, DEQ, and the others I mentioned, to establish those policies and procedures for the consultation. So that's really what it does. Okay. I think, that will be public and everybody will be on the same page.
And it's sort of the regulatory process that we would normally use, or negotiations? Or?
Right. It's just a consultation.
Okay.
It's not a veto or anything like that.
Okay. But it will be published and...
Yeah. I mean, it's just like they would do what the federal government does when they consult with the tribes.
I'm actually familiar with that. Sir, would you like to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Honorable chiefs and fellow tribal leaders, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having us today. My name is David Darling. I'm from the Nansemond Indian Nation. I'm a lifelong citizen, as my mother was before me, and I'm also on the Tribal Council of the nation. And I understand, I've heard a couple members of the committee mention that this is somewhat of a complicated bill, and I understand that. But I think if we take it back a step and get out of the weeds a little bit, it's a fairly simple bill. There are a number of federal laws already on the books that touch on a lot of these things, and more importantly, for those of you who are a little bit of a student of history, there was a treaty formed between our ancestors and yours, a treaty where our warriors came to your defense at great expense, a treaty in which we pledged fealty in exchange for some real basic rights, most of them human rights and sovereign rights. And I think that regardless of what political persuasion any of you may come from, I think every one of us honors and understands the value of honoring treaties and agreements. And that's really all we're here to look at today. So rather than getting lost in the weeds, we just take a step back and look at this for what it is. We're simply asking you to live up to the obligations you've already made. Thank you very much. I urge you to support the bill.
I appreciate your remarks. Is anybody else interested in speaking in favor of the bill? Please come forward. Mr. Ford.
Madam Chair, Jay Ford, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. For all of the reasons you've heard already, we support this. Virginia's tribal nations have been a key partner in some of the best restoration that's going on around the Commonwealth. And they have always come to the table with the best interest of all parties in mind. And so we're excited about this. This is a voice that needs to be heard in our permitting processes in the state, and we hope you support the bill.
Thank you. Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Nikki Robner with the Nature Conservancy, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. We're also in support of this bill. Thank you.
Good. Okay, is anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Are you speaking in opposition?
I fall between.
You fall between. You're
yes,
neutral then.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chairman Marsden. I'm Julie Langen. I'm Director of the Department of Historic Resources, and we administer one of the programs that's mentioned in this bill, the Burial Permit Program. I want to thank Delegate Krizik for his leadership and hard work on this bill, as well as for his willingness to address a short list of issues, the majority of which are reflected in the amendments in the version of the bill before you. As has already been stated, there has been a lot of hard work put into this bill. And I just want to call to your attention one outstanding issue that we have yet to reach agreement on. But before I do, I want to say that I have nothing but the greatest respect for the tribes, and I prioritize the department's relationships with them and value our consultation with them. And we do consult with them already. That said, I want to call to your attention that there remains this one issue, which, if you look at line 329, includes language that would require the consent of a tribe before the department can issue a burial permit. The reasons I have concerns around this issue is that we often are dealing with multiple stakeholders and competing interests. And it would be, I can envision a scenario where we might have multiple tribes involved, and the King William situation that was just referenced a moment ago is an example of that, although it did not involve a burial permit. But we might also have historic cemeteries of African American families, unmarked cemeteries where it's hard to even know who is buried in them. So then we have to involve everybody in the discussion about what is appropriate. As I said, we do consult with tribes now. We want to continue to and even have a more robust consultation with them. I have just this one concern about the word consent before we would issue a burial permit. Thank you.
Yeah, in all full disclosure, that's the one area, that's the one word in there that's not a consultation, and it is a stronger word, and it does require consent in this case. In that the tribes have been pretty unequivocal about that. This, when it comes to their burial grounds, that this is something that they stand strong on, and so I'm respecting their position, and that's where we're going to have to beg to differ with the administration. But I want to say we've had really fruitful discussions all along, and I want to thank them and the secretary and the director for all the hard work that they've done and spent a lot of time with us helping to draft this, what is almost perfect right now, but one word away.
I guess my comment would be, and certainly maybe my colleagues have comments too, if in fact if there's a process for getting the permits and there's a process for requesting consent, if in fact a burial ground is involved, I would think that that would lay the framework for a negotiation. So I don't view the word consent as necessarily a barrier, but I acknowledge that it is something that has to be achieved.
Word, Madam Chair. Yeah, you're right.
Any other comments?
I want to ask my question.
Okay. Let me see who's in the queue here. Let me go to Senator Williams-Graves, and then I will go to Senator Stewart. Senator Williams-Graves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking to the bill.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to take the opportunity to thank the patron for bringing this bill. I remember it last year when Senator McClellan brought it as well, and some of the same faces we saw last year in support of it we see this year, and that's really good. This bill is a respectful bill. There have been so many instances where this country has been disrespectful to Native Americans, and this bill respects the Native Americans. It respects their burial ground. And I think that consent is required to maintain the integrity of that burial ground. And I hope that the administration will soften their position on that particular issue and stand with the tribe. And at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Okay, this bill will go to finance. Senator Stewart has his name in the queue. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't disagree with anything Senator Williams-Graves just said. I do have a concern because I have a letter from a chief of another tribe who feels like they're being discriminated against in this bill. So I'm gonna abstain until I can learn more, and I just want the delegate to understand that I need to learn more about this and do some research and talk to a couple of the other tribes before I commit either way on this.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Suderline, excuse me. Senator Suderline, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My feelings are pretty similar to Senator Stewart. I really appreciate the man that came up. I can see him just on the other side of the thing, about fourth row, and talked about the 1924 Racial Integrity Act that really screwed up so many things for so many people across our Commonwealth. And that was a terrible thing that happened. And it makes it harder 100 years later when you're trying to deal with legislation. And so I really appreciate your comments, sir. And I'll be abstaining as I try to sort through the situation here as well.
Okay,
Madam
colleagues.
Chair, that just wanted, for the record, that's Chief Stephen Adkins of the Chickahominy.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. I would like a motion at this time. It does have to be re-referred to finance if it is the will of the committee. Okay. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 10, noes 2, abstentions 2.
Okay. I believe that concludes our docket. Am I correct?
Madam Chair, that does complete the docket.
Okay, thank you. Before I will entertain a motion to adjourn, the chair of the committee asked me to acknowledge the wonderful people who have supported our committee throughout this last session. Ashley Huntz, you are an intern, right? So thank you so much. Michael Jackson, you're part of the clerk staff and you're always here supporting us. Nathan Smith, DLS attorney, and Anissa Cothrell, DLS attorney. Thank you so much for the work you've done to help our committee function. Okay, colleagues, I believe this completes our, do we have any other meetings scheduled? Okay, our docket for this session is complete. I'll take a motion to adjourn. And there's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Let me compliment the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.